I'm going to spend just a few minutes, coaches, walking through a session as such, or a process. But what I'm not intending to do here is start at this point, walk you through progression to progression to progression. You've got an entire session. What we're going to look at is the pros and the cons, essentially, of doing this type of practice in a variety of different ways. Hopefully, finishing with something that's game-like, and we can see how we can adapt this basic practice into something that's like a game. Tom, I am going to use you for this because you are going to be this orange player in the middle. So to start with, a very simple session. We're focusing on passing, receiving, and turning. And what we're really going to focus on within that is this thing that I hear coaches and players talk about quite a lot called scanning. What does scanning mean? So Tom, I'm going to start with that question. What does scanning mean?
As if I'm the orange player, was that? Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, in this first practice, this takes me back to primary school. This is Piggy in the middle to me, and I'm the Piggy. I'm definitely looking at the ball, at the player on the ball, trying to maybe guess which way they're going to pass, trying to look at maybe their body shape, where are their hips, where are their shoulders pointing, what are their feet doing. And also at the same time, maybe trying to just keep track of where that player is behind me. I mean, it looks quite narrow on there, but if it was slightly wider, knowing how quick I personally am, I'd really have to make sure I know where that player is behind me too, so I can try and block that pass.
Perfect. So let's have a look at this. Tom is our magic player in the middle. So the ball starts with the blue. They pass it into Tom in the middle. Tom does something, a bit of skill, a turn, and then passes it through to the other blue on the outside. And the ball just goes through in a straight line. Tom, my advice to you would be check your shoulder, have a look what's behind you before you receive it. The reality is that player behind you isn't going to move, so you don't have to. So you just fixate on the ball. So you just look at the ball and you just pass it forward and backwards. Now, typically that might look like this. We've got lots of separate pitches and everybody doing their own thing. So everyone doing the same. Ball starts at one line, goes through the middle player, gets to the end line, and back through. After about 30 seconds of this, Tom, you're one of the oranges in the middle. How much fun are you having?
Yeah, I mean, once I've done it a few times, I've received a pass. I'm probably going to start to get a little bit bored, I think.
Okay, so Tom's getting a little bit bored, and also he's not really looking behind him. He's not checking his shoulder. He's just looking at the ball because the player behind him is in a fixed position. So let's have a look at how we might change this. Let's say we merge two pitches together. And what we might say is players in the middle can move. So now we've got an entirely different picture. Tom is still the orange. He's a little bit lazy and he's not moved. He's stood still. But if we look at what this blue player's done, by moving, they're now receiving the ball and passing it in a very different way. Maybe they receive it on their back foot, maybe they open their body, but that's very different to what they were doing in the first practice. The way that we can challenge that further is now if we ask the players on the outside to move. So Tom's the orange in the middle still, he's received the ball, but look what this orange behind Tom has now done. He or she has moved quite a lot. Tom, what might you have to do differently now if that player on the outside is moving?
Yeah, so for me, this becomes a little bit more fun because I've got some more things to think about. I might even start watching the other blue player in the middle and thinking, I might need to do the same as what they're doing because they might be doing something really good. So I'm going to have to scan for where they are, scan for the timing of the pass I'm about to receive, but also before that I get the ball is look for where my teammate is behind me.
So you'd say that this type of practice is much better for your enjoyment, and also you're having to scan a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as repetitive and predictable.
Okay. Now, if you coach really young kids, this might be the point you get to. If you coach more able players, or if you coach older players, or even if you coach young kids, but you've done this a few times, you might be able to get to a different stage. And now we're going to complicate it a bit. Now we've got lots of players on the same pitch, essentially doing the same thing. Now it looks really easy here because everyone's stood in a straight line. But now if we look at what happens when we've got players on the outside moving and players in the middle having to move so they can see the players on the outside, now it becomes a bit more chaotic. So Tom, you're still this orange player. How is this affecting your engagement? How is this affecting your skill?
Yeah, I think for me it's becoming much more engaging because there's a lot more moving parts, which probably look a little bit more like the game of football. But what I'm also conscious of is nobody at this point is going to tackle me. So I still feel relatively safe, that nobody's going to take that ball off me. And it just gives me probably a little bit more time and composure to figure out how I might receive that ball and how I might send it to my friend.
Superb. Now, if we say players on the outside are constantly moving, so we've only in these previous slides showed you players on the bottom line moving. Players on both lines, the top and the bottom line, are now moving. Let's have a look at not only is scanning different, but look at where the players in the middle go and the type of receiving that they're going to have to use, the type of passing they're going to have to use. So the player in the middle, this was Tom, he's now come really deep. Whereas we've got this blue is a little bit higher. This yellow was really far away. This red is near the middle. So you've now got short range passing, medium range passing. You've got control where you've got lots of people around you. You've got control where you've got lots of space. But your decision of where to run is going to be affected by where are the players on the outside and how many players are close to me. So we're changing the challenge. Again, I'm not sharing this with you to say start right back here and then build it. It might be that this is your start point or this is your end point, but we're seeing that how each change affects your player engagement and affects their skill differently. So now let's have a look at it in a circle rather than a rectangle. Tom, you're the player in the orange. The players on the outside are constantly moving around the circle now. So rather than moving along the line, it might be that they end up bumping into each other, the two oranges, because they're moving around one circle. How's that affecting your engagement? How's that affecting your scanning?
Yeah, I think with this shape of the pitch, this change, I'm definitely going to be more like an owl. I'm really going to have to spin my head around a little bit more just to really keep track of where the player on the ball is and where my teammate is, that who I'm going to try and find. And also, I'm going to have to keep an eye on those players in the middle. Where are they moving to? How fast are they moving into those spaces? How can I maybe use a big movement or maybe just a small movement to get that space for myself to receive the ball?
So, and a couple of things that we could do, coaches, to challenge this. A number of you have said in the chat, add defenders. So I haven't got an icon ready, so that circle there might be a defender, and we might have one defender in there. Your players might be much better, and you might have two defenders in there. What might your defenders do when they win the ball so they don't just give it back, where they might dribble out? But if we are truly going to turn this into a game, I guess what we could do, and again, sorry, I've not got goals ready, but I'm just going to pop some out here. Imagine that these rectangles are goals. They could be empty goals, they could be big, they could be little, they could have goalkeepers in, but you could have some goals outside the pitch, and it could be more than two. You could have 4 or 5 goals around the pitch, and it could be that after a set number of successful passes, it could be after a set time period that the teams then attack a goal and they try and score. So you can count your points up, you can count your passes up, it can be time-based, but then they can then go and attack the goal. Or it could just be that the defenders, when they win it, they try and score. Or it could be for both. So going through this idea, I see this quite a lot, this type of practice right back here. Oops, too far. I see this type of practice quite a lot. Have a think about how that's affecting your player engagement and how it's affecting their skill. And then if we fast forward it through all of these alternatives that we've shown, what effect does that have on the players? And again, it's not necessarily that you have to follow that as a progression. It might be that you start at this point, depending on the players you coach. And here's something that you can do, just a final thought. If you've got players who are finding this really easy, just take the bibs away. So they're all wearing the same color. And now they have to find 2 teammates in and amongst lots of players all wearing the same bib. It will just increase the challenge even more if that's what your players need.